Sounds really long.
Let's begin by waving and greeting to our friends joining us via Zoom, and Zoomies waving to us Roomies. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lynchburg. I still have to think when I'm saying that. Here we gather in a spirit of freedom and friendship. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age, whatever your gender identity, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we work together for justice, compassion, and peace, we also acknowledge with humility that our buildings sit on historically Monacan land. My name is Gary Duvall. I've been a member of UUCL for 53 years, and I'm a member of the Sunday Services Committee. If you are with us for the first time, we're glad you chose to be here this morning to participate in the service for this church community we love. We would be happy to tell you more about our community during virtual social time on Zoom or in person in Drysdale Hall following the service. If you would like to receive our monthly newsletter and Friday email updates, you can fill out one of the yellow cards in the pocket on the back of the seat in front of you and drop it in the offering basket. If you're on Zoom, please fill out the contact form found on the homepage of our website at uulynchburg.org. You may also wish to join our Facebook group. For those of you on Zoom, please note that the order of service is or will be in the chat to the right of your screen if you're using a PC. If you're using a phone, the link is at the bottom of your screen. As we enter our time of worship, we light the flame of our chalice, sharing these words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of life. This morning, our opening words were written by Andrew Pakula. Come into this circle of community. Come into this sacred space. Be not tentative. Bring your whole self. Bring the joy that makes your heart sing. Bring your kindness and your compassion. Bring also your sorrow, your pain. Bring your brokenness and your disappointments. Spirit of love and mystery, help us to recognize the spark of the divine that resides within each of us. May we know the joy of wholeness. May we know the joy of being together. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
All right, I'd like to invite all the young ones and young at heart to join me in the front for a story. All right, now I'm gonna ask you to scoot over just a little bit, please. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hi. Okay. So it's 1 week, but does anybody remember what we talked about last week? So we started our month of talking about compassion. And compassion is one of the ways that we can show kindness. Let's see if that's better. Let's see. All right, so I have a book today called When I Smile, a book of kindness. There are many different kinds of smiles, young and old, dreamy and playful, beaming and shy. Every smile is an amazing gift, a shining sun that can spread kindness and light up people's hearts, even when the sky is gray. That's what my grandpa taught me. When I first smile in the morning, my eyes are closed. This smile is soft and sleepy, like my cat Grisseau. When I smile my breakfast smile, I'm saying good morning to my family as we eat and get ready for the day. The next smile comes from my little sister on the way to school. Some mornings I'm worried as we walk there. Will we get to school on time? What if class is too hard today? Luckily, Lily is in a good mood all the time. She smiles and it puts courage in my heart. Thank you, Lily. I'll hang on to your smile all day long. As soon as I see my friend Margot, we can't help but smile at each other. Both our mouths turn up like huge rainbows. We bop our heads back and forth, stick out our tongues, and start to giggle. We share everything as friends, even our goofiness. Not all of my smiles are so silly, though. Sometimes my smile is a bit quieter. This smile is just a little lifted corner, hidden behind my hands. It spreads across my face slowly and isn't as easy to see. When I smile this smile, it's more delicate, and it usually comes out when I'm nervous or shy. Some smiles are small and more polite. These are the smiles that Lily and I give to people we don't know as well, like the lady next door or the gentleman downstairs. It isn't always easy to be so well behaved, but still, I like to brighten someone's day when I can. My smile can also help me meet new people and start a conversation. What's your name? Do you want to play with me? And how about you? With my brave smile, I can go anywhere and do anything. Exploring a magical garden, tropical jungles, or sunny beaches. And thanks to this smile, I can make lots of new friends along the way. I'm not always feeling so happy. Like sometimes at recess, I can get very angry with my friend. When this happens, it feels like our friendship is frozen over. I don't know what to do. What if I offered my friend a big smile of peace to show I'm sorry and want to make up? 1, 2, 3, smile. This smile helps melt our frozen hearts. When I'm with my grandma, our smiles are like swings. They go from her to me, from me to her. This smile is full of tenderness. This smile is a way to say, I love you. At the end of the day, we like to have a pajama party in the living room. My daddy sings loudly along to the music, and we all dance. Our cat does the cha-cha, my parents salsa together, and Lily does the super anything, jumping up and down and waving her arms. I dance around and catch all our smiles as they light up, making joyful memories. When Lily gets tired and loses her smile, I pretend to look for it all over the house. Come back here, you sneaky smile. Where are you hiding? It makes her laugh, and the joy returns to her face. You see, I tell her, your smile is a friend, and it never goes very far. And sometimes, after I'm tucked in my bed at night, I smile, just to show a little kindness to myself. I think about a beautiful place, about animals, and about all those I love. And when I smile this time, my heart shines bright like a huge star, making me feel so happy. How do you feel when you smile? Does it feel good to make a nice smile?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Does it feel hard to smile sometimes? No? Yeah?
It uses all the muscles, even in your eyes.
Yeah, smiles do use a lot of muscles all the way up to your eyes. That is true. So it takes a big effort, huh?
When I'm upset and I have to get my picture taken, then when I have smile,
Yeah, when you're not having a good day or you feel upset, but it's time to take your picture taken, you just have to smile and that is hard. Yeah. Smiling is such a good way to show kindness and to spread it around, isn't it? I liked the examples of how you can use your smiles to make new friends and help other people feel comfortable. And so today, upstairs, we're going to be talking about how little things we do can make a really big difference in the world, and that our little acts of kindness are ways that we can show compassion to other people. And one of those ways is by sharing our smiles. All right, are we ready to go upstairs? All right, let's go.
The ministries of our church are supported by the love, talents, and efforts of our many volunteers and staff, as well as the monetary support of our members and friends. If you have found this church to be of value in your life, then I invite you to be generous, as our morning offering is freely given and gratefully received. If you're on Zoom, you can send a check to the church at 818 Court Street, Lynchburg, Virginia, 24504, or you can contribute using Venmo. There's a link and QR code on our homepage at uulynchburg.org. We receive these monetary gifts along with the gifts of your time, work, and creativity, which also sustain our church. As together we give generously to support our congregation, let us also commit ourselves to a unity of spirit to make manifest a more just, peaceful, and loving world. The meditation this morning was written by Albert Einstein. A human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and feeling as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. You'll hear from Chris and Kennan in a little bit. We've done this service for, I don't know how many years, but a long time. And I don't ever remember looking on the UU website before to see what that is saying about us as a group. And since we only have 2 speakers this time, I thought I might just read part of what's published there for the general public to see. In Unitarian Universalism, you bring your whole self, your full identity, your questioning mind, your expansive heart. Together, we create a force more powerful than one person or one belief system. Unitarian Universalists do not let go, or do not have to let go of personal experiences, practices, or beliefs to be a part of this community. We join together on a journey that honors all our individual backgrounds and experiences. Our beliefs are diverse and inclusive. We have no shared creed. Our shared covenant is expressed through the inseparable and deeply interdependent shared values of interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity, all centered around love. Although Unitarianism and Universalism both have origins as liberal Christian traditions, today we embrace diverse teachings from many different global religions and philosophies. Unitarian Universalists believe more than one thing. We think for ourselves and reflect together about important topics like the following: the existence of a higher power, life and death, sacred texts, prayer, and spiritual practices. We are united in our broad and inclusive outlook and in our shared values. We are united in shared experience. Our open and stirring worship services, religious education, and rites of passage, our work for justice, our commitment to center the experiences and needs of the marginalized and most vulnerable among us, our dedication to living in a way that always centers love. Use that mic.
Hi, so my name is Kennan, and I've been coming here to UU Church for about roughly a year and a half now. And as you may recall, a couple weeks ago, I also became officially a member as well. So I'm very grateful to be a part of this community. That's been really a good embodiment of love and justice in the world as of today. A little bit about me: I grew up in a pretty conservative Christian household within, the wide-reaching Protestant sort of view of Christianity. We oftentimes emphasized really going out to the world and evangelizing to people who are, quote unquote, unsaved from our perspective. We went to church, every Sunday and did oftentimes extra church events and groups and whatnot to try to build our faith together as a community and to also really better understand our own texts and our own beliefs as well. I also went to a private Christian school as well, and not just any private Christian school, but also a classical school, which just basically means that we oftentimes emphasize the classics when it comes to literature and languages from ancient Greek and Roman times as well. One example of this is that we started learning Latin starting in 3rd grade until about 8th grade. Then we learned coordinated Greek starting from 9th grade till senior year in high school. So you can imagine the amount of literature we learned along the way. And we also try to emphasize the interconnectedness between different subjects. So math, science, literature would all be interconnected, and we emphasize how they build upon each other as well. They're not just individual silos and separate from each other, but education is seen as a holistic endeavor that seeks to build the individual character as well as knowledge of each individual student. One very pivotal moment in my religious journey was back, I think it was in 2014, watching the Ken Ham versus Bill Nye debate in the Creation Museum about whether or not young earth creationism was a valid scientific option and whatnot. And at the time, I, of course, grew up in a very much young earth creationist kind of environment, so it was not too surprising to see myself espousing similar views at the time. And watching the debate, at the very end, there was questions coming from the audience. And if you've seen this debate yourself, you probably remember the very last question that was asked to both Bill Nye and Ken Ham about what evidence, if anything, could change your mind on your position on this subject. And Bill Nye answered basically saying, well, there's examples of, like, for example, finding fossils in certain layers of like very old species that would be in the same layer as like a very recent young species. And that would be a very big problem for predictive models within biological evolution that dictate that these fossils will be found here, here, and here, based upon our understanding of how biological evolution works and whatnot. He gave several examples of things like that are very concrete, very specific, and very much something you could really go investigate for yourself to see if that's true or not. Whereas in contrast, Ken Ham's response was basically, I'm paraphrasing here basically, but he basically stated that he believes that the Bible is infallible, well, he believes that it's inerrant in particular, and therefore his interpretation of Genesis and other books of the Bible saying that the earth is roughly 6,000 to 10,000-ish years old, that can't possibly be challenged or can't possibly be wrong, and therefore he can't possibly give an answer to that question. My inquisitive mind has always been really focused on philosophy and really challenging our assumptions that we oftentimes grew up with and don't even realize we incorporate into our identity and how we think about things. So sort of hearing that answer at the time really did not sit with me very well. And while it did not change my beliefs, immediately overnight or anything like that, it certainly got the ball rolling when it came to like really want to challenge my presuppositions to what I thought and why, basically. And so that led me on a journey, starting from that point moving forward, to really engage with people who did not think the same way I did when it came to religion or politics or other things. And also have encouraged me to really go read scholarly people when it comes to New Testament studies, when it comes to biblical criticism and things like that. So that way I would learn more about the exact history of how the biblical text came to be and what we can reasonably know about within academic standards and things that are more interested in understanding the how do you know what you know aspect rather than just simply saying, I know what I know because it's part of my tradition or just because it's something I grew up with or things of that nature. Not that those things aren't important or whatever, but I'd like to incorporate both things and try to understand things from an outside perspective if possible. And so eventually that led to a journey of what you might call deconstruction, basically. And so at this point, I don't identify with the same Christian tradition that I grew up with, back then. But I certainly still do value Christianity in many different ways, especially since many world thinkers and leaders of change, such as Martin Luther King Jr., especially used the Christian values in thinking to help build society for a better future and whatnot. Whether it be for the civil rights movement or whether it be the abolition of slavery and many other things, Christians certainly have played a valuable role in trying to rectify society's wrongs. Now, to be fair, many Christians were also part of the same problems they were trying to fix in the first place. So you have to acknowledge the whole picture here and recognize that Christianity has been both on the side of the oppressed and the marginalized, but also of the people doing said oppression and marginalization to begin with. And so that recognition alone obviously warrants trying to see things in a more nuanced way where you see both the positives and the negatives, whereas what I grew up with was very mostly focused on just focusing on the positives and trying to just simply keep yourself in a very kind of predefined box, basically, of what you can and cannot believe. As of today, I would describe myself more on the agnostic side. I don't particularly know if any God or deity does exist, but I'm more open to the possibility depending on how it's defined and whatnot. I've read some philosophers such as Spinoza, for example, who believe in pantheism, for example, that the universe is God. And there are many other philosophers I also read, such as Sartre and whatnot, who are existentialists, which really challenge how oftentimes many classical religions and other traditions, how they explain how we find meaning in our lives and what we do as individuals and what freedom means and so on. In short, basically, I've had quite a few challenges to myself over the years as I've read more thinkers, more philosophers, more scholars when it comes to history and religion and so on. Eventually, I moved here to Lynchburg back in the winter of 2023 for a job. And when I was driving on the street here to go to my new apartment, I saw there was a Unitarian Universalist church just on the street from where my apartment building is, just a block over towards Fifth Street and whatnot. And so I heard of Unitarian Universalism growing up, obviously, but within my very conservative Christian, environment and whatnot, it was often described as being like, too liberal, quote unquote, and like too focused on other things and whatnot. But as I got to have a chance to actually attend one for myself, because I have my freedom living on my own to actually choose to do so without immediate repercussions from family and other people, as I've gone to actually talk to people within the community, I found that it really has, I think, grounded a community and a belief system that somehow balances individualism, that people have their own unique identities and their own experiences that are, invaluable and, very much integral to who they are and what they do and why, but also balancing that aspect of the human condition with also our responsibility to the greater community as a whole, and to make sure that we can seek out justice in the world and to rectify societal wrongs and so on. And I've yet to see another religious tradition that really does that effectively in both ways, while at the same time fostering like a very open kind of discussion-based community where after the service we go into the Drysdale Hall, we can have discussions about basically anything, about any topic practically. There's really like no express like limitations of what you can and cannot talk about, and there's not going to be some sort of like underhanded like committee or some group of people who lead the community that will ostracize you if you say something that is like against the grain per se. In other words, it's a very like open discussion-based community that's really open to having different perspectives being present at the table and actually be able to be free to share their thoughts. That sort of environment is very rare to find elsewhere, and even if so, I find it oftentimes is more geared towards having the facade or almost like the theatrics of having an open environment, but in reality, it's just simply one marketing method to basically get you into a certain box at the end of the day. Whereas here, it's left up to the individual side for themselves based upon their own values and what they want to do in life, basically, to determine for themselves what makes sense to them. While at the same time, of course, encouraging people to make sure they can apply those values to the greater world at large, so that we're not just simply individual islands isolated from each other. I really valued that kind of environment, especially since that was kind of hard to come by growing up. So, my particular interest within philosophy and religion and history and politics and all of that, that's really been quite a good, I think, match for this community at large and whatnot. As you probably have also noticed, I also work in IT for part of my job, and so occasionally I'll run the audio system in the back as well. So I'm sure you've seen me in the back room every other couple of weeks, running audio as best as I can with the system we have here and all that. In terms of the community here, I found it especially helpful to have the young adults group night every Tuesday around 6:30 p.m. It's just a small opportunity for young adults here in Lynchburg to gather to play board games, card games, and really connect together as a community. I think it's especially helpful for my generation in particular because it's very hard for a lot of people in Gen Z in particular to like really have solid connections to communities that provide positive support for each other, and also to make sure people can actually have friends. It's very much a common trend in my generation to have a loneliness epidemic. So I think having opportunities like this has been immensely helpful, and we really should do more, if possible, to provide young adults with opportunities to connect with other, similarly age individuals who can also connect and really bond over even just small things like card games and board games and so on. In terms of where I'm, I guess, hoping to go with this community and all that, I want to also try to contribute as much as I can, whether it be helping people move from home to home, whether it be trying to provide new ideas on how to handle maybe the tech around here when it comes to the audio system, or how to run the young adults night. I want to try to give it my all to try to make sure this community can continue to thrive and grow. Of course, if I, for any reason, make mistakes along the way or whatever, I'm more than wanting to hear feedback and criticism and all of that. So if I, for some reason, fall short and say something that I shouldn't have probably said, which can happen to anybody, and if I happen to overlook something important because I'm just not used to that kind of experience, or because of my background growing up in white middle class America, if I'm blind to that, I want people to let me know, because I certainly can't cover everything, and I can't work on something that I'm not at least aware about at first. So if for any reason I ever am blind to sort of community-specific things, then I want to know, because I want to continuously challenge myself and to improve in those areas, if that makes sense. If there's anything else that people want to know about me in particular, I'll be more than happy to answer those kinds of questions. But other than that, that's the short summary of my life so far in terms of religion and how I came to connect to this community and how I want to keep moving forward from here. Thank you. Yes, if anybody wants to ask some questions, I'm more than happy to answer those as well.
How did your parents deal with your change in philosophy?
So they know about some aspects of my change, mostly politics, because my dad is very much into politics, and he and I are very much on the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to most issues. So sometimes we have heated discussions, and sometimes we have, reasonable discussions, I would say. Both of us sometimes can do better when it comes to approaching those difficult and controversial topics that are yet still important for us to at least have a conversation about because they matter and they impact a lot of people. I think my parents probably kind of know based on my general answers to certain questions about my change of religious identification and whatnot, but I've not officially just stated outright I don't believe in this anymore. I'm sure they probably know that based on generally how I tend to talk about religion and whatnot, but I've not entirely said no, I don't believe this anymore, partially because I will do so when I'm asked, but I'm not looking forward to the day when they actually ask me that question directly, because I want to be honest, obviously, but at the same time, it's I don't want to try to impose more strain on family relationships as it is, because they value their Christian beliefs, and I think they should if they genuinely believe it and all that. I wouldn't expect anything else otherwise, and yet it's still, it can be a source for many people, a source of tension and difficulty when it comes to people who have very different beliefs about religion and still try to find a way to connect with each other on a family level and to be able to still have conversations, be able to still attend family events together, whatnot. So I'm trying to balance my relationship with my family, but also trying to be honest and true to myself and my belief. And that's always an ongoing process, and it's not always easy. But and sure, my family does know some about my beliefs changing and whatnot, but I will try to choose carefully what I share and when. And if asked directly, though, I will always try to give an honest answer, because that's the end of the day the best I can do. So.
You said you've read a lot of
Please speak
philosophy,
into a microphone. Thank you.
essential philosophy books to read.
Mhm. Yes? Sure. That's true, yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I'm so used to people being already up here talking and all that, so yeah. So the previous question was basically how are your parents, so the previous question that was asked was, do your parents know about your change in beliefs when it comes to religion, politics, et cetera? And the current question now that's being asked is that if you could recommend one or two books within philosophy to read, what would you recommend? Probably one of the more influential philosophers I read early on was probably David Hume. He was basically the essential Enlightenment philosopher that really challenged a lot of the religious systems of his day, and also a lot of commonly held philosophical systems when it came to knowledge and so on. David Hume, I believe, wrote an essay concerning human understanding. That's a really good one, especially if you're into epistemology like I am, the study of knowledge and how we come to know what we know and why, basically. I also just finished reading a book recently that's a mixture of philosophy and psychology called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I think it's also a really interesting book. Yes, it's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor, and he is an Austrian psychologist, basically. And in the book, he recalls basically his experience in the concentration camps and how he survived. And he basically describes a system of therapy called logotherapy, basically, which is a system of therapy and whatnot to basically try to help individuals figure out what do they really want to live for and why, what's their meaning behind their life, basically. And according to Viktor Frankl, that sort of way of how you answer those questions is really influential on whether or not you do survive harsh environments like those concentration camps during World War II and whatnot. And it's really interesting to see how he combines both his analytical, psychology mindset, but also against the philosophy of what do people care about, what really gets people out of bed in the morning, things like that. I, of course, would recommend reading it for yourself to really discover the exact details and all that. But that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of the book that I can give off the top of my head. And those are the two books I recommend right now. But of course, I've been reading more and more, so that, of course, list will probably change depending on which day you ask me. So, any other questions? Okay. Well, yes. Oh, sure.
This is not as much a question as an observation that you moved to Lynchburg and became more liberal, which I consider an ironic triumph on our part.
I do appreciate your comment, and it is true that since moving to Lynchburg, I have become like more progressive, more liberal in my views when it comes to politics or religion in general, although that journey still started even before I moved to Lynchburg, partially because of my main source of like politics, whatnot, was from my father, and so it's not surprising that for a long time, I kind of like took up a similar viewpoints that he does. But as I grew older and became more independent with how I would gather my own news and my own like way of analyzing said news, I decided to like try to broaden my scope to like more sources and try to have conversations with people online who did not necessarily have the same views that I did, obviously, but who seemed to actually genuinely interested and talk to me as a person on person, in good faith, having a two-way conversation to really elucidate what do people believe and why, and to build on that. I think nowadays politics is especially very divisive and polarized, partially because whenever you talk about anything remotely political, it's just immediately a game of like, how do I figure out who's my in-group, who are my people that basically identify with when it comes to politics and what we want in terms of ideology. And anybody who does not fit into that neat box is just immediately an outsider. Thus, it becomes an us versus them narrative. And the goal is just rhetorically try to defeat and beat down on the outside group, basically. And that applies to all people within all parts of the political spectrum. And unfortunately, I think a lot of potentially good conversations are very much tainted or ruined because of that sort of way of approaching politics. I think that pragmatically and ethically, it'd be a whole lot more productive and better if we as a community across the political spectrum figure out a better way to have these kinds of conversations, that at the end of the day, we're not walking away dehumanizing each other. We're not walking away thinking that, people are just, just by their very nature, just like evil or like untouchable or whatever. And that at the end of the day, recognize that we're people, flawed as we oftentimes are, that we're trying to do what we can. And that I think effective change starts with trying to really understand where people are coming from and why, and going from there in a good faith way. And certain principles that have helped me in those conversations sometimes is like being charitable, for example, trying to not jump to the immediately like most cynical or worst possible interpretation of what somebody said or why. Those sorts of measures, I think, really help have healthier conversations and can really help people connect to each other, even if they don't necessarily agree 100% when it comes to politics or religion and other important topics. These issues, of course, matter, and obviously I do have my own lines about why I do or do not accept as debatable and whatnot. But I try to make sure that those lines are only there because they're absolutely necessary and not because I am caught in my own view, my own system, and trying to extend those boundaries farther than when you might need to go, if that makes sense. So it's about being aware of ourselves and our own limitations, our own blind spots, and trying to make sure we can effectively connect with our people to make sure that we are not only aware of their own blind spots, but how that also affects our own as well. So.
Thanks, Kennan. I am Chris Sonne, and I am the vice president of this congregation. And I'm going to let y'all just sit with that fact while I get my banjo.
Chris, just a question. I read recently that a banjo player spends half his time tuning up and the other half playing out of tune. Is there any truth to that?
I'm going to let you decide that here in just a minute. What I want to know, Gary, is why the email you sent me said that we were required to provide our own music for this, and Kennan didn't even bring his bagpipe. So this is, as I said, my name is Chris Sonne, and this is an Irish Dement song that kind of gets me going in the direction as far as this, I believe. So. Everybody is wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody is worrying about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. But no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. Think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say once you're gone forever, and some say you're gonna come back. Some say you rest in the arms of the Savior if in sinful ways you lack. Some say that they're coming back in the garden, bunch of carrots or little sweet peas. Think I'll just let the mystery be. Everybody is a-wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody is a-worrying about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. But no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. Think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say they're going to a place called glory, and I ain't saying that ain't a fact. But I've heard that I'm on the road to purgatory, and I don't like the sound of that. Well, I believe in love, and I live my life accordingly. And I choose to let the mystery be. Everybody is a-wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody is a-worrying about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. But no one knows for certain, and so it's all the same to me. Think I'll just let the mystery be. Think I'll just let the mystery be. Yay. And I see the look of hope in your eyes. You're like, oh, God, he's done. Woo! That's it. There you go. Well, I was raised in a very non-religious home. My dad claimed to be Catholic, but really, apart from seeing him cross himself whenever we went across the state line or a railroad track, that was it. We really didn't see any other impact of his beliefs. When I was in my early teens, I was curious and decided that I should attend church on my own just to really see what attracted so many other people. And so I asked my mom, and she suggested I try an Episcopal church because that's how she was raised. I started attending and eventually was confirmed into the Episcopal church in Richmond. And it was during the confirmation process that the whole religious thing kind of unraveled for me. I began to ask uncomfortable questions and to receive inadequate answers, but mostly I just couldn't reconcile a loving God with all the mean and petty expectation imposed by the church. It made no sense to me that what a person professed to believe would matter more to God than how that person acted to others. I left the church and really didn't attend much again until Priscilla introduced me to the UU Church in Roanoke about 40 years ago. A young dynamic minister named Kirk Bauer, who's now an old dynamic minister, led the church. And as I listened to the UU principles and the emphasis on how we treat others, I knew I had found my spiritual home. I feel that even stronger all these years later. For me, the church is about our relationships to each other and our surrounding community more than my spiritual needs. The connections made here in Lynchburg and at Susie have given me a base of people with shared belief in love, kindness, and giving. I feel privileged to be part of this community, and I'm grateful to be able to give back to deepen this connection. And as often the case, I find that the more I give, the more I get back in return. I'm not sure that my personal spiritual outlook is particularly interesting, but it does show, but just being asked here to share it shows a really big difference between the UU Church and most other churches out there. Years ago, I was introduced to the concept of reverse paranoia, and I have found this life approach to work really well for me. If you're not familiar with reverse paranoia, it is the irrational belief that everyone and everything in the world is conspiring solely for my own personal benefit. It's a thing. But I find that this belief really softens seemingly bad things because I know that they will ultimately make me a better person, no matter how painful that might be. Criticisms, however poorly delivered they may be, are intended to give me humility or to broaden my perspectives. And if someone is totally off base from where or how they are directing me, well, bless their little hearts for trying. I'm sure they're doing the best that they can. So thank you all for your hard work. I know it hasn't been easy, but you're doing a great job, and I think I'm going to turn out okay. So thank you. Thank you very much.
That was entertaining. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 159, This Is My Song. As our service draws to a close, we extinguish the flame of our chalice as we say these words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Let's end our service by waving farewell to our friends on Zoom, and Zoomies waving to us roomies. Our benediction is written by the Reverend Dr. David Breeden. Go out into the world, not to be perfect, but to practice, to be a practitioner of compassion. Wherever you go today, may you seed compassion. May your hands remember how to tend, and your heart how to return when compassion is hard. For no garden grows in a day, but they grow. Go in peace and practice growing.